Let me tell you something powerful. You don't need a voice to be heard. In a world where everyone's trying to be the loudest, the smartest, the most noticed, your silence can be your weapon. Your discipline can be your strategy. And your presence, that can be your message. You outsmart people not by proving them wrong, but by proving yourself right without uttering a single syllable. You walk into a room, head held high, posture strong, eyes steady, and without a word, you said, I know who I am. Every early morning you rise while others sleep, you're speaking. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you're speaking. When you hold your ground, stay calm under fire, and let your work do the talking, you're shouting at the top of your game. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to seek validation. Because when you're locked in, focused, and consistent, people notice. They see your discipline, they feel your confidence, and eventually they adjust to your silence. Power isn't in noise. Power is in control. Silence is often misunderstood. In a world obsessed with noise, opinions, and constant communication, silence is mistaken for weakness, for absence, or even for ignorance. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Silence, when used intentionally, becomes one of the most powerful tools a person can possess. It is not the silence of inaction, but the silence of strategy, a quiet force that commands attention, creates space for thought, and shifts the balance of control in any room. When you choose silence, you choose observation over reaction. While others rush to speak, to argue, to prove themselves, the silent individual listens. They study, they watch. They understand the emotions, the patterns, and the intentions that lie behind every word spoken by others. This gives them an edge, the ability to respond with precision, or sometimes to not respond at all, because often the smartest move is the one that isn't made. The loudest person in the room may seem like the leader, but more often than not, it's the quiet one taking mental notes, waiting patiently, who holds the real power. Silence also builds mystery. It creates curiosity. When you don't overshare your thoughts or emotions, people start to wonder what you're thinking, what you know, and what you're capable of. That curiosity gives you leverage. People respect those who are measured in what they reveal. Silence can create tension, not negative tension, but the kind that makes people lean in, pay attention, and take you more seriously. Your presence begins to speak louder than any words could. Moreover, silence keeps you in control. It's easy to lose yourself in a heated moment, to say something impulsive, to argue just to win. But when you remain silent, you don't give your energy away. You conserve it. You direct it. You become unshakable. This kind of restraint is not passive, it's discipline. It's emotional maturity. It's a refusal to be manipulated or provoked. And in that silence, you become immovable. In a negotiation, silence can pressure the other side to speak more than they should. In conflict, it forces the other person to confront themselves because you're not reacting. In leadership, it inspires trust and confidence because people see that you're not ruled by ego or emotion. Silence becomes a language, one that speaks of strength, patience, and certainty. So the next time you're in a situation where everyone is scrambling to be heard, remember that you don't always have to speak to have influence. True presence doesn't require volume. Sometimes the most commanding thing you can do is say nothing and let everything about you do the talking. Discipline is one of the most underrated forms of communication. It doesn't require words, announcements, or attention, yet it tells the world everything about who you are, what you stand for, and where you're going. It shows up in the way you wake up every morning, in how you take care of your body, in how you manage your time, and in the energy you bring into every space. Without saying a single word, discipline lets people know that you're focused, committed, and not here to play games. People often think that discipline is just about self-control or routines. While that's part of it, the deeper truth is that discipline reflects values. It reflects what you prioritize, what you sacrifice for, and how serious you are about your goals. It tells people that you're not operating based on mood or emotion, you're operating from a mindset. And that mindset becomes visible. When you're consistent in your efforts, even when no one's watching, that effort radiates in how you carry yourself. It becomes part of your character. You don't have to announce that you're working hard. Your results, your progress, and your presence speak louder than any motivational speech. People notice those who are dialed in. They might not always say it out loud, but they recognize it. When you walk in and you're organized, sharp, and focused, others can feel that you're not the average person. You've made choices, tough ones, that have separated you from the crowd. And people can see the difference between someone who lives on discipline and someone who lives on excuses. What's powerful about discipline is that it's a silent reminder to others of what's possible. It challenges people. It makes them reflect. When someone sees your consistency, it either inspires them or intimidates them because it reveals their own lack of commitment. That's the kind of influence discipline has. It doesn't shout, it doesn't boast, it simply is. And that quiet consistency builds a reputation that words could never build. Think about the people you admire, not just for what they've achieved, but for how they operate. There's a common thread. Discipline, whether it's the athlete who trains in silence, the entrepreneur who builds without a crowd, or the artist who creates day in and day out without applause, their discipline communicates volumes. It says, I'm not here for attention, I'm here for growth. And that, more than anything, earns respect. So if you want to outsmart the world, you don't need to prove yourself in debates or win every argument. Just live with discipline. Show up, even when it's hard. Keep your promises to yourself. Be consistent when others quit. Over time, people will realize something powerful about you, that your silence isn't emptiness, it's focus. And that kind of discipline doesn't just speak for you, it defines you. Confidence is not something you need to announce. It's not found in loud voices, boastful words, or trying to dominate every conversation. Real confidence is much quieter and far more powerful. It doesn't demand attention, it draws it naturally. When you truly believe in yourself, when you know your worth, your ability, and your direction, you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. That belief shows in how you walk, how you sit, how you look people in the eye, and how you stay composed when others are falling apart. You've probably felt it before you walk into a room and there's someone there who says very little, maybe even nothing at all, yet everyone seems to notice them. They don't chase the spotlight, but the spotlight seems to find them. That's the energy of quiet confidence. It's not arrogance and it's not ego. It's rooted in self-respect and inner stability. It comes from knowing who you are, and more importantly, from being comfortable with who you are without needing constant validation. When you operate from this kind of confidence, your actions speak for you. You're not easily shaken because your sense of self isn't built on external opinions. Whether people praise you or criticize you, you remain steady. That's rare and it's magnetic. People are drawn to those who don't flinch under pressure, who don't shrink in discomfort, and who don't need to talk over others to be seen. Nonverbal confidence also comes through in the way you handle failure. A confident person doesn't hide from mistakes, they own them, learn from them, and grow. They don't crumble when things go wrong. They adapt. And that adaptability is visible. It shows in your posture, in your willingness to face challenges, and in your ability to keep moving forward without complaining. Another place confidence shines is in how you treat others. You don't need to belittle anyone or compete for attention when you're secure in yourself. Confident people listen more than they speak. They don't need to dominate a room, they observe, they understand, and they speak when it matters. Their words carry more weight, not because they speak often, but because they speak with purpose. This kind of quiet confidence makes people trust you. It makes them respect you. And over time, it builds a reputation that's hard to ignore. You become known not for how loud you are, but for how grounded you are. That grounding shows up in your body language, calm, steady, controlled, and it speaks louder than any speech ever could. So, if you want to make an impression, don't try to be the loudest voice. Be the most solid presence. Stand tall. Move with intention. Let your calm be louder than their chaos. Because the world listens not always to the one who talks the most, but to the one who speaks the least and still gets heard. Energy is one of the first things people notice about you, even before you speak. It's invisible, yet incredibly real. You walk into a room and people can sense whether you're confident, nervous, focused, or distracted. That feeling you give off, that's your energy. It's a silent introduction, a nonverbal message that tells people what you're about. And the most powerful part, you control it. You shape it through your thoughts, your habits, your attitude, and how you show up to life every single day. You've probably experienced this yourself. There are people who don't say much, but when they enter a space, the whole atmosphere shifts. It's not magic, it's presence. It's the energy they carry. They're calm, centered, and intentional, and everyone around them feels it. On the other hand, there are people who drain the room with their negativity, insecurity, or chaos, even if they're smiling or pretending to be confident, because energy doesn't lie. You can fake words, but you can't fake your vibe. Your energy reflects your mindset. If you're focused on growth, peace, and purpose, your energy becomes magnetic. You attract respect without demanding it. You inspire people without even trying. But if you carry bitterness, fear, or anger, even quietly, people feel that too. That's why mastering your energy is so important. It's one of the smartest ways to outsmart the world without ever opening your mouth. It gives you influence, power, and presence, all without having to explain yourself. What's powerful about energy is that it speaks faster than language. Before you say a word in a meeting, an interview, or a conversation, your energy has already communicated your confidence level, your intentions, and your emotional state. That's why personal growth is so crucial. When you work on yourself internally, your discipline, your emotional control, your vision, your external energy changes. You walk differently. You breathe differently. You respond differently. And people feel that shift even if they don't know how to describe it. Energy is also contagious. When you bring calm into a tense room, others begin to relax. When you bring focus, people start to sharpen up. When you lead with self-respect, people often match that energy back. That's influence. And you didn't have to raise your voice or prove a single point. You just had to carry the right energy. So instead of trying to impress people with words, impress them with your presence. Show up with clarity. Move with purpose. Let your energy say, I know who I am. I know why I'm here, and I'm not moved by distractions. That kind of silent message is powerful because it bypasses the mind and speaks directly to people's instincts. You don't have to tell people how talented, hardworking, or focused you are. Your results will do that for you. In a world full of talkers, it's the doers who truly stand out. Letting your work speak for you is one of the most powerful forms of communication. It removes the need for validation because success becomes your language. Excellence becomes your response. You don't need to say, I'm dedicated when your consistency proves it. You don't have to claim that you're focused when your progress is undeniable. Work done in silence often echoes louder than words ever could. When you commit to mastering your craft, showing up day after day, and pushing through even when no one is watching, you begin to build something much more valuable than a moment of attention. You build credibility. And credibility doesn't come from what you say, it comes from what people see you produce over time. That kind of reputation can't be faked. It can't be bought. It can only be earned through discipline, effort, and execution. The truth is, many people talk about what they're going to do. They post about their goals, they make announcements, but not everyone follows through. That's where you separate yourself by putting your head down and letting your work create the proof. Let people wonder what you're up to. Let them be surprised when your name is attached to something excellent. You don't need to explain the hours you put in, the sacrifices you made, or the obstacles you faced. Let the results tell that story. This approach also builds long-term respect. People may admire flashy words in the moment, but they respect consistency in the long run. When you become known as someone whose work always meets a high standard, people trust you. They rely on you. Opportunities begin to find you not because of what you said you could do, but because of what you've already proven you can do. That's the quiet power of execution. Even in the face of criticism or doubt, let your work be your response. When someone underestimates you, don't argue, build, improve, deliver. That silence, backed by undeniable quality, shuts down more doubt than any speech ever could. And when people see that you don't need the spotlight to shine, they begin to take you seriously in a different way. They see that you're not chasing attention, you're chasing growth, mastery, and impact. So instead of using your voice to explain your vision, use your energy to build it. Let your actions narrate your journey. Let your results be your reputation. Because in the end, people remember what you did far more than what you said. And when your work speaks for you, the message is always loud, clear, and impossible to ignore. Emotional control is one of the most underrated signs of strength. In a world that constantly tests your patience, challenges your beliefs, and sometimes even provokes you on purpose, the ability to remain calm is a clear indicator of power. When you can control your emotions, especially in moments of pressure, conflict, or uncertainty, you take control of the room. You take control of the situation. And most importantly, you take control of yourself. People often mistake emotional reactions for passion or authenticity, but there's a huge difference between reacting emotionally and responding intelligently. When you react without thinking, you hand over your power, you allow other people, circumstances, or even your own fears to dictate your behavior. But when you pause, breathe, and choose your response, you stay in command, and that is something others will always notice and respect, even if they don't say it out loud. Think about the people you look up to, the ones who seem to move through chaos without losing their center. They're not emotionless, they're emotionally disciplined. They feel everything, but they're not ruled by it. They've learned that losing your temper, panicking under pressure, or speaking out of anger might feel good in the moment, but it rarely leads to progress. Real strength is quiet. It's in the ability to observe, absorb, and decide, not in the impulse to react. When you walk into a tense environment, whether it's a meeting, an argument, or an unexpected challenge, your emotional state sets the tone. If you're calm, others begin to relax. If you're composed, others start to trust. If you're focused, the distractions lose their power. This is how you lead without words. Your energy becomes the thermostat, not the thermometer. You regulate the environment instead of being affected by it. Emotional control also gives you an edge in personal growth. When you're not constantly reacting, you give yourself space to reflect. You begin to understand your triggers. You notice what patterns keep showing up in your life and why. You stop blaming others and start taking responsibility. This self-awareness leads to self-mastery, and that's where real transformation happens. In every situation where someone is trying to get under your skin, trying to test you, or trying to make you feel small, your silence, your stillness, your refusal to lose control becomes your message. You don't need to defend your value or argue your point. Your calmness speaks for itself. It says, I'm not here to compete with chaos. I'm here to rise above it. And over time, people will see you differently. They'll sense your power. They'll feel your presence. Because emotional control isn't weakness, it's quiet dominance. The one who can stay calm under fire, who doesn't let their emotions take over, is the one who leads the moment, owns the space, and outsmarts everyone without having to say a word. There's a certain kind of power that comes from being quiet but deeply aware. In a fast-moving world where people rush to be seen, heard, and validated, the ability to slow down, observe, and analyze quietly sets you apart. Outsmarting others isn't always about being the loudest or the most visible. More often, it's about being the most attentive, the one who listens more than they speak, watches more than they act, and understands far more than they reveal. Being observant, not obvious, is a strategy, a silent advantage. When you're observant, you notice things others miss. Body language, inconsistencies in stories, emotional shifts, patterns in behavior, these subtle signals give you insight. While others are distracted trying to impress or outshine each other, you're studying the game. You're gathering information, measuring energy, and preparing your next move with precision. And because you're not drawing attention to yourself, no one sees you coming. That's the key. While they play loud and flashy, you play smart and quiet. People often equate visibility with influence, but real influence comes from understanding. The more observant you are, the more equipped you become to respond strategically instead of emotionally. You see where things are headed before they get there. You anticipate problems. You read between the lines. And that kind of perception allows you to make moves that feel effortless because you've already seen the whole board before anyone else has even figured out the rules.